welcome everyone to the final forum for our series this year. So it's the showcase where we kind of try and talk about not just standards, but other things relevant to our industry. And today's topic, we're covering a little bit on digital twins, because there's a lot of conversations out. There's a lot of presentations and informations out there, but not a lot of common conversations. So we're changing it up a little bit today. So Katherine, or Kate Williams from FrontierSI, is going to talk to us about digital twins and what she has to say about that. And then I'm going to have a chat with Milos in a fireside chat where we are going to talk about digital twins, data integration from the perspective of a utilities organisation, and you're all invited to participate and ask questions of that. And we'll go through to executive dashboards with Fergal, Coleman from Symphony 3, National Underground Asset Registrar with Andrej, Bashfield, who everyone knows, and ACDC presentation from Johan, now open Spatial, and next gen validation with Andrej. And then Gabby will do some tech stuff, and then George and I will do the final wrap up and give you some of the results of the polls. One of the things that we focused on during this forum this year was making sure that we were more conscious and present in relation to recognition of our traditional owners, and we kind of asked people where they were, what land they were coming from, and so Wurundjeri is where I am at the moment, and that was one of the most prominent areas, which then got us talking about acknowledgement of country, and Kylie Clark from Greater Western Water has a really good one. So I'm going to hand you over to Kylie, and she's going to do her acknowledgement of country on behalf of all of us, and welcome everyone to the forum. And Kylie, take the floor.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land upon which we meet today. I honour their ongoing connection to country and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I have lived in Lara, being Wadawurrung country, for most of my life, growing up visiting the Uyangs to play, hike and enjoy barbecues with family and friends. However, at that time, I didn't understand much about Aboriginal heritage. Working within the Water Corporation for 16 years, I am proud to say I have a greater understanding and appreciation of our lands and waterways, attending smoking ceremonies, visiting the Barwon River, learning about artefacts and scar trees. I feel privileged to work for Greater Western Water in an environment that encourages all staff to acknowledge and be respectful to traditional owners, country and waterways for future generations.
Thanks, Kylie. So our first presenter today, as I mentioned earlier, is Kate Williams from FrontierSI. She is, as far as I'm concerned, pretty amazing, and is going to talk to you about digital twins and a roundup of key initiatives in Australia and New Zealand. So welcome, Kate. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll hand you over to, I think you can present now. Is that correct?
Awesome. Thank you, and thanks for inviting me today, and thank you for that wonderful acknowledgement of country. So, are we seeing my screen? Yes, great. So I am going to kind of kill you with a whole list of slides, but please pop any questions you have in the chat, pop your hand up. We're a moderately small group, and so I'm happy to stop and clarify or for you to add any thoughts as we go along. I've got 25 minutes, so that's a long time if I just keep droning on. And Milos, that is open to you as well, so go for it. I'm really passionate about digital twins. You've probably or might have known that I'm always presenting, and straight after this I'm presenting to the Queensland Spatial Information Council. I'm doing the same slides, which is a bit of a cheat, so I hope no one's going to that session as well. But I really am grateful for the opportunity to talk to people about it. There's a lot of people out there that have put digital twins in that hype bucket and maybe think we're going to go the way of Bitcoin, but I think digital twins is a really important initiative for anyone that's interested in data, particularly integrating data so that people can make new insights and make sense of it. So hopefully it's a topic that a lot of you are interested in. So I'm just going to go through how to define them, and there's plenty of definitions, but I'll tell you how I do it. Why the spatial industry is definitely out in front in the multidisciplinary spatial digital twin discussions we have. Why FrontierSI is involved and why we're so committed to spending our time talking and working on digital twins, and a couple of examples and learnings. So for those of you who don't know FrontierSI, we were born out of 15 years as a CRC for spatial information, and when our government funding ended, we set up operation as a not-for-profit, and any surpluses we make, we invest back into the spatial industry, investing in projects, research projects, and other things that we hope will grow the entire space and spatial industries. We're a partnership organisation. We have government and industry partners, and I'll show you a little bit more about that later. But it's my role as Chief Business Officer to make sure that the market knows who we are, how to work with us, and that our partners are satisfied and our partners are getting value out of the work we do. So we work across positioning, so things like GPS. We've just recently done a trial with Optus on looking at the potential for 5G to help with positioning, pre all the news about Optus. So it's a super exciting brand to be aligned with, and I think it's interesting how GPS and positioning is such a important part of all of the devices and apps that we use today. Geodesy, data analytics, and we kind of put digital twins in that data analytics, data infrastructure buckets, and space as well. We've been working really hard on connecting all of the new space initiatives with us, the users, the spatial community that make this data accessible and usable for other people. And that's a really interesting topic about how space data and space comms will help enrich and maintain digital twins, especially for digital twins of the environment, which are kind of down on the list of priorities at the moment. This is our partner list. And the only reason I bring this up is to show that our partners are state, federal government agencies, universities, and industry. And it's really a partner priority, digital twin. We recognised 3 years ago, as we went around speaking to all our partners, that everyone thought digital twins was going to impact their offering, the services they need to provide. And I think we've seen this play out pretty strongly in the state government. So what is digital twin? Digital twin, by definition, is a digital replica of the real world. So we see a lot of 3D models being called digital twins, and there's a lot of people that get kind of hot under the collar and angry. But I kind of think that data is one of the essential pillars. So it's not a digital twin, it just needs some other things along with it to come under this definition. So you need the data. You absolutely need to be able to represent the real world. You need a model though. So you need to be able to simulate something in the digital world and have it react or respond in the way that you would see it in the physical world. And so if you think about some of those classical digital twins of pump stations, say, you need to be able to simulate what would happen under a scenario in the digital world so that you can tweak your design or look at your maintenance program or do all of those decision support applications. And the model has to simulate what happens in the real world. There's no point having a model of a pump station that tells you that you can run it 24 hours a day, where when you do that in the real world, it burns out after 12. So it's that connection and that representation of the modeling as much as the data that's important. And the last one, which is really important, is visualization. We see a lot of digital twins having really amazing and intuitive interfaces and ways to relate to them. But also, I think really pleasingly, we're seeing a lot of focus on browser-based visualization. So you don't need all of the specialized tools and software and ability to drive them, and you don't need a GIS professional or a BIM professional to help you interact with them. A lot of focus has been put on the visualization, the ease of use, the intuitiveness, is that a word, of use, but also the way that that visualization gives you insights as well. So the human brain is amazing. You put a couple of data sets together and you can start to make sense of them in a way that not seeing them together allows you to do. And so people might say, you know, it's all about fancy interfaces, but let's not underestimate the power of our minds to make decisions once you see things that you've never seen together before. And so I like to put this, this diagram up. This is one that I made back when I worked for the Victorian government on the Fisherman's Bend digital twin pilot. And it just shows you that the white things are the building envelopes of the existing built form. The coloured squares are the height constraints in the planning scheme. And your mind enables you to see really quickly where there is an opportunity, if you're a landowner, to build a high-rise apartment building. So you don't have to have any fancy analytics, but putting those two things together that you've never been able to see in 3D before enables you to see the opportunity for that area of Victoria. And I think that's the power of visualization. But we need to go further. We need to be able to ask those questions. Which one of these properties should I buy if I want to build a 12-storey building? Really valid question, the type of question that's asked every day. You should be able to model that, but you also should be able to model, if I were to do that, which parks might I overshadow? What might be my impact on the amenity of people in that area? And some of the digital twins that I show you later are asking those very questions. I think I neglected to say the definition I used before is from the ANSLIC digital twin principles. They've been out in the market for 3 years now. Do have a look at them and have a look at some of the other. There's another document that was written by Data61 about digital twin frameworks that you can find on the same website. Really interesting viewpoint on digital twins, and I think a viewpoint coming from government organisations, and I think you see that right at the top. Digital twins are about delivering public good and providing value. So if people can't use them and benefit from them, they kind of don't meet those two objectives at the top. And I think that's something that I'm really, that really resonates with me. We're creating infrastructure that multiple people can drive value from, but ultimately should make the world a better place. We should be able to make better decisions. We should be able to make more collaborative decisions. Maybe systems thinking rather than just looking in the silos. I'm a traffic modeler, I'm a water modeler. And I won't read them through, but I think probably for you guys, that standards element down the bottom is really important. That ability to federate, which comes from standards, but also comes from all the things that you need in regards to data governance and digital twin governance. And I think those are some interesting topics that still need a bit of work. So why spatial? Why I'm a spatial analyst? Anyone who knows me, it's what I've done for my whole career. I've helped people create insights from data. Why are we leading the discussion? And why are we so excited? Well, they're going to enable the more effective use of the data we create. They're going to enable that data to be unlocked for a range of different people that needed specialists, like all of us, to unlock it for them in the past. Digital twin will help break down that significant barrier. And they're a step change in the way we think about spatial data and implement spatial data infrastructure. We need to think about a world where our data at the scales that we're comfortable with, at the temporal scales that we're comfortable with, is going to be integrated with very highly detailed models of the built form, looking at data that's coming in second by second. Not, is this data a year old, is this data 2 years old, but is this data 1 minute old? And how do we make sure that our data and our infrastructure and our way of thinking about the world keeps up with the requirements of digital twin? And why spatial? Sorry, my text has gone a funny size, but I will tell you what those dot points say. Location really matters. If you've got a BIM of a building, it can't sit on a white sheet of paper. It has to sit in the real world, and where it sits impacts the performance of that building. That might be about the heating and cooling, the HVAC. It might impact on the amenity of people around it. You know, is it going to create unacceptable amounts of wind or shade in an area? And so it's really important that everybody who's creating really detailed 3D digital data can integrate it together. And location will enable those digital twins to be integrated. So you don't need to be, if you've got a building model, you don't need to have all the other data, but you can bring your building model into that world. And location is, you know, obviously the way that that's done. And by doing that, it unlocks the value of that data. So this, you know, blue building model is really useful for the asset owner and the asset operator. You know, they can look at the way they might operate HVAC, or the lifts, or what have you. But that's kind of where it ends. But if you're able to integrate that into a region, a precinct, a city, we can make a whole suite of different types of decisions. You could make a decision about what's the solar potential of the buildings around it if you were a local government and you wanted to incentivize people to put in solar panels. You need to know the shape of this building as well as the shape of the other building. So you can start to make different types of decisions once the data is integrated, and Spatial allows you to do that. But why am I so excited about digital twins, and why is FrontierSI happy for me to talk to people about it all the time? As I said before, it's a real partner priority. All of our partners are in the business of creating and sharing data. And so digital twin is going to be a big driver for that. It aligns with our purpose. As I said, it really unlocks the value of the work we're doing. What's the point in doing geodesy? Well, we're creating that 3D model that all of these digital twins will sit on top of. So it's really unlocking the benefit that we provide. It's a big part of adoption. You go to a digital twin discussion and you meet people you've never met before. And that's great because all those people are now part of the spatial ecosystem. They want their data to sit with our data and to be integrated and aggregated by the spatial community. So we're going to see and we are seeing a huge uptake in the adoption of the work we're doing and the understanding of it. And the last one is it's really future focused. I think digital twin, the term may come and go, but the concept is going to persist because it's really about creating very data rich, but also insight rich environments and doing that at scale. And that's the way we think we're going to be making decisions about the future. When you look at sci-fi movies or you look at those kind of Will Smith movies, this is what people are doing. This is how we see the future. We have got a very big disconnect between the person on the street who thinks about the way government or utilities make decisions and the way we're doing it now. Digital twins are going to kind of bring those together. That idea that we've got all the data at our fingertips and we're zooming in and running scenarios and making insights, this is what digital twin facilitates, and this is the way we want to see data being unlocked and decisions being improved. So this is just a brief kind of example. I don't know why New Zealand's green. It wasn't green before, but that's okay. It's quite green when you go there. There's lots of different digital twin initiatives at lots of different scales. And I've just put kind of the ones that are geographically big on this. There's lots that are hugely detailed and hugely impressive at smaller scales. And I think the challenge will be for us as an industry to help with that federation and integration. We've probably all seen Live.New South Wales. They've got a great PR machine. They had a launch of Bathurst City yesterday, so check that out if you haven't had a look at it. Morisset is another good example of local government investing and making decisions with digital twin. New Zealand actually has digital twin as a priority in its national infrastructure strategy. So really forward thinking by the people of New Zealand to see how digital twin is going to be the digital infrastructure of the future. Will help them cross-domain, cross-government. Digital Twin Victoria, again, they've got a great number of things out on the internet, and you can now actually access that tool, the kind of open light version, and they're definitely working hard on a range of different applications, and the e-complied planning demonstrator is a really fantastic one to have a look at as well, so just have a Google of that. I won't go around and list them all, but I suppose the idea of this map is to show you that this is not a few people doing a few things. There are a lot of people, and there are a lot of people globally. Sissy Slatanova from UNSW was just in Singapore yesterday at an OGC conference, had a whole kind of afternoon talking digital twin because it's a really important topic globally and very important from a standards perspective that people are on board with the concept and able to position the work that they're doing within a digital twin mindset. So I've just got 3 slides that showcase the digital twin projects that FrontierSI has invested in. The reason that we chose these 3 was they're a little bit different than what state government and local government are investing in. There's a very, at the moment, urban flavour to those projects. And look, that makes sense because that's where the planning problems and decisions are, and that's where people live. But we thought we'd take a little bit of a outside view just to build up some showcases and demonstrators of non-urban digital twins. The first one we did with University of Canterbury in New Zealand. This is a really fantastic project. They've done a great job looking at how digital twin can facilitate not only flood modelling, but the communication of the outcomes of flood modelling. And I think this year has been a really interesting one. If you've been in New South Wales, you know, the idea that a 1 in 100 year flood can happen twice in 1 year. We need to be able to better communicate what that means. A digital twin as a really intuitive visualization platform is a great way to do that. But it's also a great way to do things at scale. This project looked at those risk assessments and bringing all of that kind of information together into the one platform. This one is a bit of an urban one, but it's not looking at the development life cycle. It's looking at the amenity and the human health kind of livability impacts of the cities that we have and that we're building. This was with UNSW, New South Wales Department of Customer Services, and a range of other partners. This is looking at overshadowing, amenity, and how people live in cities. So not how buildings relate to each other, but how people relate to that built form. And the last one is another people-focused one. This was looking at scale, how digital twin technology can help better understand and communicate the impacts of the environment on people's health. And that environment we looked at included bushfire smoke, heat from the urban heat island effect, and how these things actually can impact population health. So this was an interesting one. We've just looked at how to get some more funding to further this work and submitted a grant at the federal level, because for the epidemiology community, this was a real really exciting project because it brought so many elements together and it enabled them to understand and also predict health outcomes. And so you can see from the partners there with EPA and so on that it was really a kind of Australia-wide collaboration. And so just some learnings from all of those projects. We've got the kind of key researchers together and had a bit of a roundtable. And we definitely think digital twins are a great way to unlock data from silos, but the silos are real and the silos are actually really hard to break down. It takes a long time for people to trust what you're going to do with the data, or even to understand how to share data. So there's some real fundamentals of data management that still need to be worked on, and digital literacy, I think, across industry, really important. Investment in data is still needed. All of the data that you want doesn't exist. We think it does, but it doesn't. And just as a really simple example, for flood risk, one of the things you want to know is the floor height of housing. How do you know that at scale? When I was involved in flood modelling back when I was a consultant, you do a whole heap of things to understand floor height, including making 20 different assumptions about the height of the roof versus the height of the ground versus the number of stories, you know, but actually having data on it at scale, you know, it's really an assumption, and then people go digging around, and in New Zealand they found that in lots of places it didn't exist. But also that standards are needed as a high priority. A lot of work on these projects was cobbling together data, just like it was at the start of my career, you know, 20-something years ago. It's getting data, working out, does this field mean this? Does that data mean that? Why is this a line? Why is that a polygon? Standards are really important, and their work to get data that has never really been a priority for it to be integrated with other data sets, digital twin really makes that a priority. So who's going to invest in that data, and who's going to make sure that we're applying the right standards? Governance and federation models are still in development. We really understand the concept, but you can't just go and pick up a digital twin governance manual. This is how you do it. These are the roles and responsibilities. These are the roles and responsibilities if you're the organisation contributing to digital twin. So still a lot of work to be done. A lot of time is spent on selecting technology and the architecture. Should we use open source? Should we use this? Everyone else is using Terrier. Should we use Terrier? The technology is not mature, and digital twins are systems of systems, which is neither a good nor a bad thing. It's just what they are. What is the identity management tool that you're going to use? Just as important a question as what is the visualization tool? So, you know, a lot of work and thinking to be done on how that system of systems hangs together, but also sits within organizations' existing system of systems. How do we share our solutions and code, especially in the research area? There is a very big open source community. Are we as active in digital twin as we could or should be? The research sector is super keen. Everyone in research wants to be involved in a digital twin project. So I think expect to see lots of interesting tools coming out, and I kind of encourage people to engage with the research sector and bring the pieces together. Don't reinvent the wheel. And the last one, I think, which is the thing that I'm most passionate about, is digital twin initiatives are multidisciplinary. It will make you speak to everyone in your organisation, everyone in your ecosystem, and people you've never had to talk to before, and that's a good thing. So digital twins cross-domain, and that's what we want to see, because it has to represent the whole of the area that you're twinning. So get ready for very high expectations once you start the discussion, but you're going to have to collaborate to meet them. And really, I encourage people to create the multidisciplinary teams at the start. There's really interesting questions around legal and ethical and questions of equity when you start making decisions in a digital twin. So make sure that you're including all those sorts of people in the discussion as well, not just your favourite tech and data people. And I think that's been a really big learning as digital twin projects are being worked through in the spatial community. So no one had any questions, and I've gone right to time, Kelly. So thank you all for listening.
Right, thanks, Kate. That was really insightful, actually. I enjoyed that presentation. Does anyone have any questions before Kate has to run off? I know that Gabby wanted me to pop up a quick poll, which is about to come up. But otherwise, you know, all that information around, I mean, it's really great that we have these digital twin models, and where actually my research says that Australia is leading in this field, but the governance really is, and the standards, what's underpinning it really is something that I think we need to bring along on the journey and focus on a little bit. George, did you have any comments? Unlike you, you're on mute.
Well, I'm off mute now, but no, thank you, Kate. That was great. Thank you for giving us an insight into what's going on around the world, but also what FrontierSI is doing. I was interested in what you mentioned about New Zealand. Where do you think they're placed in terms of, if we were to compare it to what Australia is doing?
Yeah, look, it's a bit different because they don't have the state level, and some of the biggest investments in digital twin in Australia are coming from the states, so New South Wales and Victoria. But they do have, you know, people like Sean from Wellington City Council. They do have incredible people working at that local government level, and really, I suppose, influencing on the world stage where digital twin can add benefits. So even though they don't have this, I suppose, you know, tens of millions of dollars that some of those state projects have here in Australia, they've got really good local government examples that are probably ahead of where we are at with our local government, even though there's lots catching up, City of Melbourne, for example. So what they do have that we don't have is more of a focus on the role of digital at the national level. I think Australia is probably lacking something there, George. So, you know, maybe they don't have the cash on the table that we do, but they probably have a bigger ambition nationally.
Thanks, Kate. I do agree with you about that. Something to do with our own barriers that we built. You know, we had 7 railway gauges. We've got the same thing with our territories and boundaries. So maybe we can overcome all that.
Yeah, and look, that question of federating a digital twin, it's a fun word to use because it is the federation as well that we have to overcome to see that happen nationally, George.
Thanks again, Kate. I enjoyed your presentation. Thank you for taking the time.
Yes, thanks, Kate. And that's Kate's QR code for her LinkedIn profile. So if you'd like to connect with Kate and continue that conversation, feel free to QR code Kate. I hope that's all right, Kate. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. That was very interesting. So I'll just move on to our next piece for today. I thought I'd try something different this year, as I mentioned earlier, and make this less of a presentation and more of a conversation around digital twins. And Milos has a lot of comments around utilities and digital twins, and we have some like thoughts. And so I thought I'd invite him along to participate in that conversation. So Milos, welcome, and thank you for agreeing to be a part of our forum today.
No problem.
Great. And sorry, just also there are our LinkedIn QR codes if you'd like to follow us and continue the conversation after the forum. So Milos, what are some of the key questions with respect to standards that digital twins bring into focus?
It was kind of an interesting question, I guess, because, you know, there's a lot of focus on technology, and there isn't a system of record these days that's worth calling a system of record that doesn't have an API. So connectivity between systems is, particularly with the sort of rise of platforms. So, for example, it isn't really a GIS app anymore. It's a platform. You know, we've got Maximo, we've got IBM platforms, etc. So the platforms make it easier than ever to connect things up. And the way I kind of talk about this and why I think it's important for standards is, just imagine I'm in China and I speak Chinese. And just imagine you're in, I don't know, South Africa, and you speak Zulu, for example. Now, I can ring you up. The platforms are there. Pick up the phone. But can we have a meaningful conversation? And therein lies the problem of data. We have lots and lots of legacy data, and we have a semantic Tower of Babel. And a lot of the new data is actually pushing a lot of that aside, but the legacy is still there. And so the biggest single problem for standards is when you, and digital twins really, I think, certainly the platforms of digital twins, the technology side of it, will bring that to bear, because it'll be easier to connect up. But do we have anything meaningful when we get there? Can we have a real conversation? Can we do something meaningful? You know, what do I mean? I've got a classic situation in utilities. We have a massive legacy, and we have what I call an orchard. I have many different varieties of apples to deal with, and that's very confusing to the end user, because one of the foundations, and Kate talked about this, trust is important. Trust, you know, it's the hardest thing to keep, it's the easiest thing to lose, and once you lose it, you can never get it back. So trust is important. People, if they're going to make decisions, and some of those decisions can be about people's lives, then they want to trust what they're looking at. And if it's confusing and there's a semantic Tower of Babel, they will immediately distrust it. So that's where I think standards comes into play. And this is about standards not within data sets. It's about when you start talking about bringing things together, you're talking about looking through data sets. And so that relationship between data sets is the thing. I think it's the kind of the elephant in the room when it comes to bringing things together. Ah, why did that come up?
Did you think I'd forgotten?
So this,
I did.
Yes. So this is, well, that's actually a good segue. That particular diagram. This is something that I put together. It's part of a one of the things.
Can you see it? The diagram?
You've got to probably click next. So yeah, click on that. This is an interesting one to talk to. So if you go back to click again. So this is what everybody wants, don't they? Data-driven decision making. It sounds fantastic. There are 4 components to it. So you have to have critical thinking. That's about what is it that's important. And it's really important to understand that. Digital literacy. What does that mean? That's about technology, okay, and how to use them, when you should use the right technologies. And then you've got the next one coming through.
But isn't digital twins about increasing the everyday person's digital literacy and putting that decision-making ability to use spatial data in the hands of the common person?
Absolutely.
Because so far I haven't had a very good experience with the digital twins that I've seen in terms of I would say I'm the common person in that.
Okay, so these come together. So yes, you need to be able to use technology, but you also need to understand storytelling with data. It's very different to just data on its own. And data literacy is really important. People have to know how to create good data. Anyone can create data. Mostly they create bad data. Creating good data is what we want. Bringing those all together. So truth this is where you start to see the connectivity. Truth's important. We're looking for sources of truth, which is a combination of good data and critical thinking. If you click next, meaning's really important, which is the nexus between critical thinking and digital literacy. What does it mean when I look at that? What can I take from it? And so if you go to story, this is about the message. So technology and storytelling helps deliver a message, and the storytelling and good data instills trust in people in what they're looking at. So this is how I think about it. So that's all very fine and good. So just click again. That thing in the middle is what you want. Now, how do you bring all that together? because you really want to bring all those together. And what I tell people at Melbourne Water is you need to have an information management mindset. Okay, that is the core, bringing it together. It's that boring thing that no one wants to do, information management. And so that's where standards, governance, all those things come together. This is the glue. Without that, those things they just don't hang. They just don't hang together. They're interesting things in their own, and we tend to focus on one or the other, but together is what creates data, if in my perspective, data-driven decision making. If you haven't got all these components and you haven't got an information management mindset, you're not going to be making data-driven decisions. You're just not going to do it.
And I wonder, you know, in terms of information management and mindset, the traditional information management idea for managing your data and et cetera has changed so much with the innovation that's coming along with digital twins that we now need to change how we do that as well. So it's almost like, George, SharePoint, you know, and Microsoft. Back in the day, you had, you know, the suite of Microsoft products, and we all knew those. Now the suite's changed. And so we all need to learn the new suite, which is SharePoint and Teams and that sort of stuff. And I think it's the same type of thing, right? We all need to shift our mindset, exactly what you're saying. But with that, we need to really consider the governance and the frameworks and the standards, etc. Otherwise, it's just going to be a big jumble of mess. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, not a lot has changed, really. You know, we reinvent things a lot. You know, what they say, on the shoulder of giants do I stand. One of the things about technology is, I remember when computers first actually started to be quite ubiquitous, PCs, and we had a saying, the computer is as organised as you are. There's nothing inherently efficient about technology. We make it efficient by the way we think about it, that critical thinking component. We do that as people. So we can't go away. It's not a abrogate responsibility to the computer and, hey, AI will fix it for me. No, it's about getting that mix right. You know, and look, there's a really interesting tension in certainly within water utilities. The digital twins that we're interested in primarily because we are a factory more than anything else. We produce water and we produce recycled water from waste. Massive factory we are, and we're very interested in process because we've got to keep that factory going 24/7, no holds. You all want that water. You don't want to hear about interruptions, and you want that waste taken away and recycled, etc. So process is very important. So process twins, and we have a very complex process to produce, to deliver water and to remove waste through the, you know, treatment plants, etc. So process twins rule for us. Thing is, there is no one twin to rule them all. It's going to be a whole, if you like, nexus or ecosystem of twins. And therein lies the creative tension. You've got a situation where you want very specific, you know, predictive capability within your twin, which means you need to get very specific. You know, a general question will give you produces general answers. We don't want general answers, we want specific ones. But then we have the tension, which, well, how do I bring that together and don't create overload for my people? Okay, so it's all very fine and good to throw lots of things at people, go, hey, you can have the whole world on your interface. Trouble with that is there's no focus. People won't know where to look, so they don't look anywhere. So and that's a real issue for us, because we have situations in utility land where people need to make decisions that are very critical to that system. And so they can't go, oh, I don't care. They have to make decisions. Overloading them with too much doesn't help. Giving more is not better necessarily. The right stuff at the right time, yes, still the same problem. So those kinds of tensions with digital twins are still the same. We want that predictive and simulated capability. It's going to be specific. That means it's going to be an ecosystem of things. How do we bring it together that doesn't overwhelm our operators, so they don't miss what's going on? And part of this, the real part that I like about digital twins, to be honest, the bit that's often missing is, yes, we have a model, and yes, we have some data, and we draw some information from the real world, and then we process it. It really, for me, becomes a digital twin when it goes back into the, you go back into the real world and affect a change, affect the real system. And ideally, you do that through some sort of automation so the person doesn't need to do it. So remove systemic, low-hanging fruit, sort of low-risk decisions. You remove them from operators so they just know that's going to happen. So let me give you an example of that. Something happens, you automatically generate a work order, so the person doesn't have to do that. That fairly boring and straightforward task. That'd be a great example of how a digital twin affects the real world. So you're giving that operator more focus on critical decisions that humans need to decide on, as opposed to something redundant like just go and put in a work order for next month to go and look at this, inspect this thing. You can, but that's that trust bit, building trust so that the operator goes, yes, I trust the machine to come up with the right answer.
Are you guys using digital twins technology at Melbourne Water?
We're doing some experiments. I mean, the thing is, it's such a broad concept. You could almost say in a lot of organisations, you're already doing it in some respects. So we have modelling, flood modelling. So it's about, what do you mean by this thing? And that's part of the reason for some of the framework stuff I've been doing is to try and focus it down on what do we think that means for us. Otherwise, you're just driving it. You're putting everything through the digital twin turnstiles, and you're sort of going, well, and I've had that conversation with people. They're saying, well, aren't we already doing that modelling? And go, yes, you are.
So what is one of the digital twin?
And that's where you have to start to focus and go, well, how do we want to actually use this idea? And as I said to you, for us, first cab off the rank will be process twins, emulating processes, but making sure that it does that back into the real world thing. So yes, it's nice to draw information. Now I'll give you an example. We're looking at one, for example, with our recycling water area. So we've got a recycling water plant down at the WTP, but it's affected by the real world. Particularly, for example, one of the things that affected is wind and weather conditions. It stirs up the ponds that the recycling plant takes water from. It shuts the plant down. So question, can we predict into the future when that's likely to happen based on our monitoring and weather information? Can we do that? And if we can be a better provider of recycled water to our customer. So we can tell our customer in advance, hey, Jane, you're not going to have water for the next, we're not going to be able to provide water to you in the next 2 weeks, this next 2 week period, because the turbidity will be too high, the plant won't be producing. Okay, so we want to be able to do that in advance and feel like we're a good provider of service. So that's a very specific twin. We're wanting to emulate that process of water walking through the ponds to the recycling plant. We want to bring so we monitor that. We monitor the ponds, but we also can get, predictive information from Bob. I'm going to bring all that together, put it in a model, come up with a prediction, and then do some notifications and so forth so that we can let our customers know. So that's a twin. It's a process twin though. Okay, it has a geographic location, but that's kind of not that important to us. What's important is that process. Can we emulate that process? Because that's going to help our customers in their planning, in what they might want to do with that recycled water that we're producing. So there's one example, and we have many processes like that, for all sorts of different reasons. Really simplistic ones. How often should I dose this particular? You're in a chlorination process or whatever it might be. How many, if I can reduce by 10% my input, I'm saving everyone in Victoria money. That's another potential twin. Question is, how do you bring it all together?
And is anybody else, Kylie, do you use digital twins at your Greater Western?
No, not at the moment.
Are you looking at process digital twins?
I'm not sure. Probably a better question for Di.
It's a future roadmap thing for us. So there is a plan to look at digital twins in the future, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, and again, it's about working out what the value of that digital twin is for your organisation, which is what Milos and I spoke about the other day, right? Milos?
Yes.
So understanding what it is and how is it fit for purpose in terms of what your business is and
look, to be honest, Kate's comment around silos. It's not just silos between agencies, there's silos in agencies as well, right? Let's all be clear about that. And so in some respects, these technologies, these platforms that are making it easy to connect those systems of record up that are siloed, it kind of makes it really obvious. And sometimes that's good. It exposes the problem perhaps that people didn't see or couldn't see, because you've got people in the background, you know, kind of making it all happen. But by simply pushing them together like that, these disconnects become obvious. And then questions get asked. Why is it like this? What could we do to change it? And I think in some respects, it's been hidden. And so that's, to me, that's one of the advantages of the ability to connect more easily, is that it just makes it obvious, oh, this needs to change.
Interesting. George, do you have any comments that you'd like to add to this?
Sorry, I just had to take myself off mute. No, look, I just find the whole conversation really interesting, because there isn't the emphasis on technology. The emphasis is on data, and that's really my sweet spot. And in fact, the diagram that I'm seeing up on the screen at the moment just makes a lot of sense. There is a story to tell, and it starts with getting your data right, and then you can build up what you want to create around that. It's actually quite simple. And you know, some of the things that I'm seeing around notifications that are coming on around the world, like some information from the UK Ordnance Survey around how they're determining the social, you know, the economic cost on, and economic and social cost of location data. They're not talking about technology, they're talking about data. And starting to see data appear on the bottom line of balance sheets of organisations. You know, if you think about it, a building's worth nothing, but if you have the right data about it, you can value it. So why aren't you valuing the data rather than the building?
That's an excellent point, George. So in a utility, we have CapEx and OpEx. And everyone loves CapEx and nobody likes OpEx. Okay, because OpEx is seen as pure cost. Capital is great, we can depreciate it, it's all good. We cannot put data at the moment as capital. But we continue to say that data is an asset. We've got some work to do.
If you don't know what you're managing, what is it that you're managing? Understand what I'm saying? So if you don't have...
I have no idea what you
Gabby,
said.
People do know what they're managing, because you see, they live in the physical world and they know it. The question is not that, because they do know that. We have people who know the Melbourne Water utility system like the back of their hand. They've been around forever, but it's in their head. And I always come from the perspective, when you're thinking about data, is what about the person who's not me? How does someone who's never seen this before, is it possible for them to have discovery? I have this concept that Bill Gates, many, many years ago, before Microsoft took off, he said this thing that is attributed to him, you know, content is king. This is the guy who makes technology. Content, data is king. And I've added to that. I say, yeah, that's true still. But access is queen. In other words, there's a tree in the forest there, right? If you can't get to it, you've wasted your time. There is no, your investment is mute if your people, whether it's internal or external, cannot find it. it doesn't exist.
Find it,
And-
but use it as well.
Well, that's true. The third thing is that what connects it, what makes Empire, is the platforms that are coming through. So platforms are the great enablers, but content is still king.
Yeah.
Content still matters.
And
And we
just
do get to focus a little bit too much sometimes on technology. I've got no problem with that. It can be really powerful, but you know,
Yeah.
just imagine the first time you got Teams or whatever, and it had nothing on it. How useful was it until you put some content on it?
So are you saying that data, so in terms of, I just want to wrap this up because we're got to get on to Fergal, but in terms of the big impediments to raising quality data, what do you see that they are in your business?
Well, I think it comes back to George's point around, you know, enabling. I mean, money talks, yeah? And so if data is truly an asset, then it should be treated that way, just like a physical piece of capital. That's my personal view. That's not Melbourne Water's view. So, but that's what I think is one of the critical. If we can, then you can have an investment. You know, like you have investments in physical things, you can have investment in quality. While it's an OPEX thing, while it's seen as a cost, that can in fact, you know, put the brakes on when and how you do it. So if you can treat it as capital, there's no problem with investing in it. Yeah, and I think that's across most agencies. If you can see that as something as capital depreciation, if you can see that as a true asset like any other asset, then you've got a completely different mindset around how to deal with it.
Which is easier said than done.
It is.
And Kate just popped in a link there about a new guideline on how to measure its value. So feel free, everyone in the chat, to check out that link that Kate's put in. Thanks, Kate. And does anyone else have any more comments before we hand over to our executive dashboards with Fergal?
No.
Great. So thank you very much, Milos. I know that you're a busy person, so I'll let you get on with your day. Thanks for presenting. Really appreciate you coming along.
No problem.
And so our next speaker is Fergal Coleman from Symphony 3, and he is going to talk to us about executive dashboards. So welcome, Fergal. That is his LinkedIn tile QR code, so feel free to connect with Fergal on LinkedIn, and you can also further that conversation with him via LinkedIn, as you can with Milos and Kate. Thanks, Fergal.
Hi, Kelly. Just a quick one. I'm able to. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm able to share my. I'm able to share my slides, I assume.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. How's that, everybody?
Perfect.
Great. Well, thank you, George, for the opportunity. I've just been listening to Milos there and frantically changing my slides around just to try and keep it on point. I'm going to talk to you today about, I guess, what we've developed for largely around local government, around presenting information to executives, really. We've talked about dashboards. I think that you've asked us to talk about dashboards. We've started to talk about scorecards actually instead of dashboards, and I think that will lend itself to some of the things that Milos has been talking about over the last few minutes. So let me get started. George, you'll direct me with any questions just to make sure I'm on point, and we'll go from there. And I'm happy to take any questions as we go. So a little bit about Symphony 3, established in 2011. We do work in various sectors, but probably 60% of our work is in local government. So we've worked with over 100 local governments, deep, I guess, domain knowledge in that sector. Two things that we do really. We've developed a platform that allows us to help councils deliver better customer experiences. And then secondly, to help them improve operational performance through better decision making and improved internal efficiencies, which is obviously where we'll go with the dashboards. Integration is central to our platform. So we try not to duplicate data in multiple places, which I'm sure is part of the discussion you've been having this morning. And our tagline is simple, connected customer experiences. And I think the simple is really quite important for the next few minutes. I know I've only got 10 minutes, but making things simple in our dashboards or scorecards is really what we're all about. So two things that we try and solve, problems that councils have is delivering much better customer services to their citizens. And obviously this has all been driven online, so we do this via websites. And then secondly, providing executives with operational information to make better business decisions, which is where the dashboards or scorecards come in. Importantly, sitting underneath that, we've got glue, which is integration. So we try and integrate everything. Okay, that's really important, and that's about eliminating a lot of manual data entry, allowing people to see information across multiple systems, etc. Is that making sense to people? My quick review of what we're doing today. I'm going to talk about dashboards, and this is a really simple diagram of how we do it. The focus of today is on capital works, and I'll take you through an example of a dashboard that we've developed for councils around capital works. This is developed in association with Charlie Bird, who's just left actually Alpine Shire Council. But I think some of the things he says in here is really important. Transparency, efficiency, and making information available to the public, to internal people, to councillors, etc. I want to talk about what executives care about. So one of the things about the work that we do and having capital works dashboards, there's dashboards left, right, and centre. I think Milos talked about this. So most councils, and I know we've got water utilities on here and other organisations, they have data coming out their ears. They often have dashboards coming out their ears. So we've kind of gone back up to the top level and said, what is it that executives actually care about? And really what they want to see information and performance at a glance, so that they can get an early understanding of where the problems may lie, and then they can focus in on what really matters. Okay, and in terms of capital works, really a lot of it is about improving the percentage of capital works budgets that's delivered year on year. And my question often to councils is, well, if you've got all these dashboards, how come your operation how come you're not improving operationally? And I think it's because we're swimming in data a lot of the time. It's not helping us make better decisions. So why a scorecard or a dashboard or a local government? We think there's three things to think about again, and I've brought this back to the highest level. Transparency, so showing information back out to the community is becoming really important. And I think this probably touches on some of the stuff with digital twins as well. You want to be able to be transparent about what you're doing in your organization so that people can see what's happening. It's an expectation in a digital world that the community can see where their money has been spent and that it's been spent efficiently. Visibility, and this is for executives, they want to be able to get in quickly and easily and see what's going on in the important places. And then accountability, driving accountability back to people so that there's KPIs they need to work towards. What we don't do is dashboards like this. I think that's the challenge that we've got a lot of the time. There's so much data, we're swimming in data, and we don't really know what to do with the information. So we've brought our dashboards and our scorecards back to the notion of visual management, which is an old lean manufacturing, comes out of the manufacturing sector, where you present information simply and easily. And bear in mind, visual management is what you see when you go into a factory. It's red and green indications telling people what they need to do. Why this is important? People don't really remember what they hear. they kind of remember what they read, but they do remember what they see and do. And the front end of our dashboard is actually a traffic light, which I'll show you in a moment. And we think that makes it easier for people to log in and see what's going on, or register what's going on and where they need to focus. A lot of what you're probably talking about, I've called it business intelligence, where you're talking about business analytics, data mining, data visualization. We're really about what's up the top, at a glance information. And we think this is really important for a lot of your listeners, George, because, how do you get stuff across to your executives? How are you going to make them care about what you're doing?
I'm guessing that was a lead-in for me to say something there, Fergal.
Well, I'm prompting you, George, but that's okay.
Yeah, look, the old saying, a picture tells 1,000 words. I remember going to a conference, a Google exec was there. He said, and 1,000 pictures tell a story. So
essentially, yeah, basically. Look, I'm not going to talk through this. What is visual management? It's the link between the data and the people. Instinctive visual cues to make succinct, accurate information at all times to those who need it. And then finally, tell you what you need to know and not what you don't need to know. That's really important. So I'm going to jump in and I'll show you, a practical example of what we've developed for a few councils in the realm of capital works. Important to say that the overall structure we've got, hopefully you can see my screen now, can be used for any type of information. So this is a project that we've done with manufacturing organizations, and again, it allows advanced manufacturers who work with one of the CRCs here to see where they need to improve as organizations. And we've used, in the background, we've got predictive analytics happening in here, but really what we're trying to do is give them a place where they can see their results based on a survey they take, and then very quickly tell them where their areas of opportunity are that they can click in, and actually action some things and get things done. As I've mentioned earlier on, that there's a whole load of other tools out there where people can delve into more detailed information. In this case, you'll see here national data that links off to Power BI where they can get really granular information. But we don't want to provide that. We want to give them at a glance information that they can work on. So this is one example. We're doing a lot of work in the sustainability sector. So this is one that we're doing, traffic light system for Deakin University and Geelong Council. But what I really want to show you is the capital works dashboard that we've developed for, in this case, Alpine Shire Council. And if I go back to the, I guess the highest level, project dashboard is all about presenting information to all stakeholders at the highest level. So Alpine Shire Council, if you go to their website and you're interested in their project information as a citizen, you can click on these links. At the highest level we can go and we can see a project pipeline. So this is what's coming down the track for a council. Very easy to see. So you can see what's been planned in your locality, where your money is going to be spent and what are the outcomes that are going to be delivered to you. Councillors, of course, love this because they can go and they can tell their community what's coming. And don't discount that from the point of view of importance of getting visibility of the work you do if you're in capital works. Once a project then gets approved, you can get in and again, same thing. You can see what's been done in your locality and how it's progressing with a simple traffic light system. So blue is it's on train, it's going okay. Green is it's completed and reds are it's behind. So again, this is available publicly for the community to see. So that's the transparency bit I talked about earlier on, letting the community see what's going on. It seems very simple. It is very simple, but you know, there's actually quite a few councils who don't want to present this information out to the community. Next thing down is the, I guess, the visibility and the accountability bit. So what I've shown you to date is what the public can see. If I log in, you'll see I get taken to a screen here. I'm logged in, I think, as an administrator, but I can see same information with a couple of different. That's not the right one. Apologies. Sorry, George. Give me a second. So I've logged in as an administrator here. You'll see there's a couple of differences. So I've got the same projects down the side here with two major changes. Number one, the number of resets and the owner of the project. And the red is a little bit more red in this case. Why is this important? Because as a CEO or as a general manager, I can very quickly get in here and I can see how projects are performing. The number of resets is the number of time a project plan has been changed. And obviously the owner is the person who's in charge of that project. So I can quickly go in here and I can say, right, well, this project is behind times and the project plan has been changed 8 times. It's worth 20,000, so it's not a major project. But quite quickly, as an executive, I can hone in on projects that are falling behind or that are having issues and focus on those. And I know that maybe sounds very simple, George, but this is, you know, this is actually what we think is one of the benefits that we offer. If people is the simplicity of being able to see, right, I'm the CEO of an organization and I want to see which of my capital works projects are falling behind, particularly if there's any high profile ones in there, and I'm going to focus my attention on that.
Yeah, look, it's just really simple. You can see exactly what's going on. Fergal, there was a question from the audience, from one of the councils. Is there a map of the projects that you've linked to these?
Yeah, there are. So here's the mapping that you can see here. So you can go in and you can look. You can. I'm showing you, I guess, a very quick overview of this, given I've got 15 minutes, George. But I can hone in and I can start seeing what's available and what's been done in various areas. And again, we can link these back to project URLs that can go back out onto a website, etc. So the next version of this, actually, we're making the map available to the community as well. We've got graphs that can be that we've got for the projects as well. So very quickly, these can be brought into, council reports and things like that. I talked about integration earlier on. In Alpine's case, there we've got linked to their finance system, which is actually Xero in their case. So again, important to say that we're pulling finance information in directly from Xero, meaning that they don't have to duplicate data, or they don't have to pull in data multiple times. So yeah, the GIS element is quite important, I suppose. And really, that's, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. That is our executive dashboard. Users can get in, they can add a project and a service here. It gets tied right back to the council plan. We've got Pyrenees using this as well. where they don't actually have any integration. So for organizations or smaller councils that don't maybe have an integration capability, they can put everything into this system here. But again, our preference is to pull information so that there's not duplication. A couple of important things, I guess, is that we can tie things back to plans and strategies. So you can link in, you know, your capital works to the actual council plans and the strategic drivers and the actual strategy. And again, we've got our milestones and our dates in here. So it can all be managed pretty simply from a very basic interface. I've run through that very, very quickly, George. So what I might do is open it up for questions. I know I've only kind of got 10, 15 minutes. So is there anything particular you'd like me to focus in on?
No, look, I think the simple message is keep it simple.
Absolutely,
you know,
yeah.
And focused.
Yeah. So I think one of the challenges you've got is, as I said, there's project management tools out there that will have graphing components to it. What we find is that they just don't get used, or they're just way too complex for people to manage. And essentially what happens is this data gets pulled out into spreadsheets or out into reports for executives to look at. What we're trying to do is provide at a glance visual management for senior people in an organization to see what's going on.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks, Fergal. Really appreciate your presentation. So again, there is Fergal's QR code for his LinkedIn. So please LinkedIn with Fergal to further that conversation, and he's very responsive on LinkedIn, so he'll get straight back to you. Thanks, Fergal. I'd like to welcome now Johan from Open Spatial. He is going to talk to you about using A-SPEC with ACDC. So over to you, Johan, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I think Colin is just going to say one or two words to start off with.
Hello, everybody. Just joining in to say hello from America. I'm CEO of Open Spatial and have met a lot of you folks in my visits to Australia, but just also wanted to surprise Johan and congratulate him on our 10,000 submittals to the ACDC portal using A-SPEC, and that's that's a big thing. So it ties in with what he's going to talk about now, and also it was great being at Locate earlier this year and seeing George there as well. So, we've had a long-standing relationship with GISA and have extensive A-SPEC experience. So just handing that back to Johan, and thanks for letting me join in.
Thank you very much, Colin.
Thanks, Colin. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks.
Okay. So ACDC and the As Constructed portal. What we've tried to do is to actually build a complete solution. We've been working on it for a while, and so we believe it is quite proven. So here's some of the stuff that we will be talking about. And the fundamental part of this is the whole build, manage, plan, design workflow that's part of the environment that we're talking about. So in terms of ACDC, it's been under development for more than 10 years. We started off with a desktop, moved it into the cloud, more than 10,000 submissions that's been validated. In terms of the volume, our submissions has been doubling year on year for the last 3 years. And so the whole idea is that we have a totally configurable standard. So we have got an off-the-shelf A-SPEC configuration. So that works with the CAD environment as well as the GIS environment, handles the domain values, data rules, output, And we're also rolling it out in the US. So in the US, they've got their national CAD standard, and we've added basically from our Muncis products the data models around that. So a universal data model in the US that it is very much a CAD and Civil 3D based environment that you have to play in the US. And so that is some of the successes that we have in the US. So thank you for that, Colin. A very important part of the Victorian Council utility environment is the Victorian Digital Asset Strategy. And part of that is the brief, the concept, the definition, the design, building commissioning, handover, and closeout and operations and maintenance side of the asset strategy that is there. And what we're doing around the ACDC and the As Constructed portal is a very important, or we cover quite a large area within that environment. So the whole design build ASCON submittal we can handle with the CAD environment. Then you've got the convert ETL type of thing, GIS asset management, and then 3D digital twin environment. And the whole is that we cover the entire workflow there, then deliver the data to GIS asset management and into the digital twin environment, and we'll be showing you some of that today. So we've got full A-SPEC configurations and support. So there's with menus to actually capture and manage the data. So the building, the drainage, the public open space, the roads, the sewer, as well as the water. So those menus and tools are available off the shelf, so fairly easily to implement. And what we're also doing, so we believe we're the only solution that actually have got all the standards configured and available. One of the things that we found that enables collaborations between the councils and the water utilities. So if we look at Wannon and Warrnambool Council, if we look at Bendigo and Coliban Water, because then it's a single mechanism going to the community to say, here's a mechanism to actually submit around A-SPEC, having the combined message to the community helps a lot. So in terms of the capture, we actually provide a tool. So sitting on the top of AutoCAD, we can then do the data capture with a drop-down list. So a very easy way to disseminate the A-SPEC information, that all of the information, you've got what is the mandatory values, and then all the drop-downs, etc., that you can do. We can also do some edit multiple attributes simultaneously to speed up that whole data capture process. And the tools can be downloaded from the Autodesk App Store for free. So that is for free for the development community. We also have released Attributor for BricsCAD. So same menu structure that's then available within the BricsCAD environment, and then the attributor that you can actually work with the data. Quite interesting, we had a new council that just gone live in the not too distant future, not in the few months ago. And in terms of talking to their development community, 60% of them had access to AutoCAD, 30% of them access to BricsCAD, and that's sort of broadly the market penetration as well. And then 10% then was using other solutions around the A-SPEC, including ListCAD, for example. So yeah, that's a screenshot from Attributor within the BricsCAD environment. So we Autodesk and BricsCAD developers and partners. That's also then available for free download from the BricsCAD App Store. that you can do. And then the A-SPEC or the A-SPEC configuration is available from your council or utility, and so you can just ask them to get the latest configuration for that, and we are sharing that with the councils. Some of the things that we've worked on: expanded notification. So within the portal, a fairly fundamental part of that is the submission and the validation of the ASCON, but then also the communication between the council and the council and the developer community. So if something has been submitted, you can now actually go and define your own workflow. So we had a fairly hard-coded one. You can now go and define your own workflow notification. So you can go and say, you define when do we want our engineering team involved, when do we want the assets and GIS team involved, do we need to notify somebody on the financial side. So that whole workflow notification is totally configurable and customizable. Expanded formats, drawing and shape submission to the portal. We'll add the MIF very soon onto the portal, that you can also submit that to the portal. We're already offering conversion to shape files on the portal itself, and then export of your asset management load file. So you can take the A-SPEC information, add some more of your own information in the configuration, that we can then automatically generate those asset management load file, for example, into your Conquest asset management system directly from the portal, from the A-SPEC data. We've been working quite a lot on the validation side. So 12, the new version coming out, 12 new features, 31 improvements, warning. So you can, on any of the validation, added warnings that it will pass the validation, but tell you, so if there's a new code list or there's, you can define which ones of those do you want. Also some custom messages. Spatial rules, inside crossing, the type of thing. We also combine that, the spatial and attribute rules. So the road center line must be inside the road pavement, but also the road names must match within the rules. Link limits, so the connectivity within the whole network, that you can go and say an object has got a minimum and maximum. So if you look at a specific valve or a node type on a pipe network, to say a specific node may have, you know, have minimum or maximum number of connections, that you can go and do that. Directionality, so we actually do add flow directions of the network as it was shown, and you can, in the configuration, go and look at that. But what we're also doing is check the geometry direction and compare that to the invert elevation and rules. But that's not all. We also check the previous and the next pipe to say the previous one's downstream invert elevation must be higher than this pipe's upstream invert elevation, etc. So giving you a complete coverage of the entire network on there. Also doing things like distance checks. So a specific asset must be or may not be within a certain distance of another asset. For example, we look at a place like in the city centres, etc., that certain things may not interfere with the building polygons, etc., adding in there. Now, we're also adding 3D validations on that. So we've actually taken the data typically then into 2D, but digital twin is certainly changing that. So the whole idea from concept to design, to the as constructed, submit that, doing the validation on the portal, giving you the workflow to the GIS, but then also combining that into the digital twin. And so, for example, here's an example in from the portal, so water and sewer drawing, adding roads and drainage, taking that from the information, so that is water, sewer and drainage. With the invert elevations that's in there, we can actually go and take that into the Victorian digital twin. So also add the road information on that. So that's then draped onto the surface. Now you can then, so we can reinstate the 3D from the 2D, so you can see what is on top of each other. So you've got the pipe diameters, that's from the attributes, so the sizes that's being displayed there actually comes from the actual diameters in there that you can show there. And then in the digital twin, you can also do the height underground. Now this is the terrain data that's not quite accurate, 100% accurate enough there, but you can then also do the before after type of validation if you want to get an idea of what is going on there, and all the attributes from the A-SPEC data there on the portal. So the whole idea is that the digital twin and federated data enable us in the portal to actually go and reconstitute the 3D aspects of the data and display that in the digital twin. If you want some more information, we're running regular webinars. So there's some of the things, the data quality, key factors for using A-SPEC when enabling full digital as constructed. So that's on the 20th of October. If you want to look at that, there's a QR code that you can go and look at what we are doing there. We're also doing monthly cohesion workshops between councils and utilities on implementation and the environments. There's actually one tomorrow where we're looking at the frequently asked questions that's been typically given to the developers, and to see if we can standardize that and improve the communication to our customers. We've expanded our help documentation a lot over the last few months. So yes, we're quite excited about the new tech functionality that we're offering. And yeah, any questions?
Great, thanks, Johan. That was a good presentation. Thank you very much for presenting for us today. And of course, you can continue that conversation with Johan on LinkedIn or directly with him, obviously, if you have his details. Or he can share those in the chat as well. George, just I know you're back. If you could go back to the chat and answer a question on TR lines, and I will introduce Andrej Bashfield, who everyone knows, and if you don't know him, you must have just entered the industry because he's been here forever. There's his QR code. He's an expert in his field, and he's going to talk to you today about a presentation that he did at Locate around National Underground Asset Register in the UK. And I'll hand over to you, Andrej.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Okay, is my screen showing?
Yes, it is.
Terrific. Okay, so I'm going to talk about three aspects of the NUAR projects, National Utilities, National Underground Asset Register, which is a major project in the UK that we're involved with. I'm going to talk basically a project overview, give you a picture of what this major project is about. I'm going to talk about how asset owners get onboarded. So it's all about underground utility data owned by asset owners and being made available. And I'm going to wrap it up by talking about what's the data acquisition process? How does the data physically get into this system, and what's the future for it? Okay, so starting with a project overview. Of course, what is NUAR? For those people who've never heard of it, it's It's a system that is going to do three things. So I'll talk about what it's going to do rather than what it is. Firstly, asset owners such as local authorities or utilities or any organisation that owns pipes and wires will be able to make their data much more readily available to those other organisations who are seeking to dig up or excavate the ground. Secondly, the organisations who then want to know the location of buried pipes and wires, they can get that asset information much more easily in a single location and piped to their phone, their tablet, their laptop or their computer. And lastly, and this is one of the things that makes it so unique, when someone's digging a hole and they actually discover something different to what's been recorded, that new data can be recorded and shared back to the utility and underground asset owners. So what's the purpose of the system? Well, here the answer is quite simple. In the UK, there's something like 4 million excavations that are carried out every year. And anyone who's planning one of those excavations is obliged to acquire information about the location of all the buried assets and services before they start their work. Currently, that information is dispersed and fragmented. It's held separately by each individual asset owner organisation. And there's more than 600 of them in the UK. So the data varies in format and quality, and the process for acquiring the information can be slow, time-consuming, and sometimes causes people to cut corners and take risks. When you put all those factors together, they elevate the likelihood of a utility strike, of actually cracking or breaking that underground asset. And there's something like 60,000 utility strikes each year in the UK. That's 160 per day. And every incident has the potential to cause serious injury or even death. So the benefits of putting in a system like NUAR, well, the benefits are actually being calculated by the Geospatial Commission. So something that makes this particular project unique is there is a national government agency that's funding it. They reckon it costs the UK economy something like £2.5 billion per year in avoidable costs. So with NUAR, there's a study in place that says that they can make an annual saving of £350 million per year. So the cost of implementing the NUAR system has something like a 30-fold benefit. And this is one of the highest cost benefit ratios of any kind of public sector investment currently in play. So from the government's point of view, this project is highly desirable and it's a high benefit major project. So let's have a look at who we're actually working with, because this is One Spatial is a key component, but it's not just One Spatial. The delivery agencies are Atkins, which is a major engineering group, the Ordnance Survey, which is the mapping authority in the UK, and One Spatial. But there are a number of other government departments that are involved. And in particular, since we're all wondering what's happened with our data as far as Optus goes, in the UK, there are cybersecurity agencies and the Centre for Protection of National Infrastructure very much involved in this project to prevent or to increase the security of the project and prevent the misuse of the data. So let's have a look at the roadmap. So we started this project way back in September 2021, and it's set for delivery in 2024. So that might seem like a long way off, but you need to bear in mind the challenge involved is really significant. So far, we have more than 650 asset owners that we need to engage with, and we need to acquire their data. We also need to build a system that will ingest all of that data in a repeatable and sustainable way, and then display that data in an aggregated format through a single window. So here's the key enablers. These are three agreements and specifications that are actually key to what happens. Firstly, there's the data exploration agreement, and that's an agreement between the asset owner and Atkins as the delivery partner, and that enables us to access the asset data and then do the necessary work to work out how we transform and ingest that data into the system. So that just gives us access to the data. The second instrument is something called the data ingestion specification. And the data specification makes sure that we have the right ongoing alignment of this asset owner's source data, and we understand the model for mapping that data into the new R platform going forwards. The third key enabler is the data distribution agreement. And this is an agreement between the asset owner and the UK Cabinet Office, who the Geospatial Commission are working on behalf of. So that's government, and that allows the publishing of the data to the new R platform and in the future on an ongoing basis. So not just a once-off. So we talk about building a great service. With nearly 12 months into the project, we're on track and we're where we want to be. And we have a working version of this system. But we are progressing towards 100% participation. So there's over 250 asset owners in 3 regions that have been engaged, and 78 data exploration agreements have been signed. So we're certainly not expecting to get everybody on board right at the start. Right now, we're in really good shape. We have the necessary momentum, but the success of the project hinges on engaging and onboarding each and every organisation that owns or is responsible for assets under the ground. So let's talk about that process. How do we get an asset owner to sign up and get involved? So in terms of our approach, we had 3 strategic components for deciding who to engage with first. First one is obvious, but it's to capitalise on the momentum by starting off with people who were already interested. So London was picked as one of the first of 2 pilot regions, as there was already an existing pilot with key players like Transport for London and Thames Water. They were already interested and they jumped at the project. And in terms of signing up the local authorities, we originally reached out to boroughs who either we worked with closely on infrastructure space or who we knew were digitally innovative and would jump at the chance to work on this kind of pioneering data project. Second key component is to obtain senior sponsorship early. We found this was really critical to unlock doors at the operational level. And the third one was the Geospatial Commission and the Greater London Authority were already singing from the rooftops about NUR, but we used as many networks as we could to disseminate the message. So in the local authority space, we engaged with the London Office of Technology Innovation and the London Infrastructure Group and London councils. And we did a similar thing in the utility space too, so that more and more networks of organisations were sharing it to their engaged communities. So let's talk about local government authorities in particular and testing with asset owners. So this photo shows the Deputy Mayor testing the system online with a handheld device. And you can see that we've got some fantastic quotations from different users who have been involved in the initial testing. There's not been challenges though, even with willing stakeholders, organisations at different stages of maturity. It requires dedicated time to bring everyone on board and ensure consistency and accuracy. It's also a huge and diverse sector. And some of the key challenges, firstly, technical, different data taxonomies and formats. And you can imagine that across the water, the gas, the power, local authority, telco sector, there's a vast range in the different naming of data, formats, attribution, and so on. And that highlighted the importance of having a common data model, and I'll show that in a moment. Security concerns were also one that came up and we needed to respond to. So we've really embedded security at every stage of the process in NUR. Next 2 key challenges are more cultural. We found sometimes there's a reluctance to share data, especially incomplete data, and sometimes even embarrassment. So we've worked a lot with asset owners to say, you know, some data is better than nothing, and it's fine if it's incomplete. It's still worth contributing. The next cultural one is the kind of capabilities and approaches to data sharing. Some asset owners publish their data online already. They wanted to set up APIs with us. Others are very unused to sharing data, so we've had to really tailor our approach depending on their cultural preference. Perhaps less relevant for local authorities, but there have been competition concerns too in the utility sector. So to respond to that, we've had a very tight focus on use cases. And we've made sure that we're sharing only specific data to share with specific people to meet specific use cases. So we're not asking to get any old data to share with anyone. And the final one is regulation and legal constraints. So we've got a huge legal stream, and we've worked with regulators to address some of those concerns. So looking at the lessons learned, I won't go through the whole list there, but what we found was there's no one size fits all, particularly with local authorities. Sometimes we spoke with the head of data in an authority, sometimes with the infrastructure teams, sometimes highway and GIS teams. It was a different role at every local authority. And we understand that local authorities have limited resources and competing priorities. So we had to tailor our approach for each individual case. Related to that, we found local authorities have different data sets, and sometimes it's centralised, sometimes it's across multiple teams and functions. And so to respond to that, we had to create a simple shopping list of data that our key contacts were equipped to go out and speak to different parts of the organisation. So let's talk about acquisition. And we'll start off by just showing you the model. It's nicknamed the MUDDI model, Model for Underground Data Definition and Integration. And it takes the asset information for those 650 different authorities, but bundles them together according to the particular kind of asset that they're representing. So with the data journey, and I appreciate that this might be difficult to see on the screen. So I'll just walk you through some components of it. So the data journey is really about transitioning, and it's about identifying through that shopping list what data we want at a particular authority, extraction of it, and we sign that data extraction agreement. And then we upload the data to NUAR and we harmonize it with the other data that's inside the NUAR system. We transform and we validate it. So the key role for One Spatial was the validation and the ingestion of the data into the NUAR platform. So we have the other agreements signed off, and at that point, the data is in NUAR and can be supplied to other agencies. So key points. First thing is when we start that data collection, the data engagement conversation has to start as early as possible. And that gives us the opportunity to work out how we can produce or reduce any burden or risk or stress or tasks on the asset owner. And then the information itself. What happens when we do some of those first data collection sessions? We've got to ask people for data. We have a narrative that we go through to actually explain what we need and what different types of information we think the asset owners might have. We usually put together a 1-hour session where we'll talk to them in a little bit more detail about what's involved. The shopping list idea has become quite popular, and we've been building it out and constantly refining it. So almost turning up the conversation and say, well, these are the kind
Andrew, you got 2 minutes.
Yep, okay. And what's uploaded? Not only is the raw data uploaded, but of course the metadata, such as technical, emergency contacts, and so on. And the output is to harmonize the data and store it in the NUAR system. So what is next? We're hoping to provide a future option of live streaming of data direct from the owner for those organizations that are able to do that. We have a dashboard. You can see some representation of that, giving us a picture of all the uploads. And that, of course, the ongoing portion of the system is that every time there's a change, the asset owners will pass those changes on to us, and that will be available inside the NUAR system. And I'll just wrap up by saying when we've shown this system at other conferences, the question becomes, why haven't we got something like this in Australia? We do have dial before you dig, but this is quite a few steps further down the track than dial before you dig. I'll wrap it up there and leave it open for questions.
Thanks, Andrew. Informative. Does anyone have any questions for Andrew? No, you were very good at explaining it all then.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Without further ado, I will hand you now over to Andrej Mocicka, who, similar to Andrew, is also a spatial expert. And so, anywho, here's Andrej's going to talk about next generation data validation. So, thanks, Andrew, and welcome, Andrej.
Thanks, Kelly, and welcome all. I'll just share my screen and bear with me for a minute.
It's okay. I've just started my timer though, so.
Yeah, very good. I thought you
pressure.
might. No pressure. Okay, is everyone seeing my screen? Okay. Just very quickly, I'm going to be talking about, I'll take it back, the geospatial data validation, or as we commonly call it, or affectionately call it, the GDV hub. It's for validation and correction of spatial data. A little bit about One Spatial. We are a global organisation. We've been around for over 30 years in the geospatial industry. And as you can see, we deal with a lot of different parts of the industries around: government, utilities, transport, etc. And we do partner with quite a few people around in Australia and overseas as well. In particular, with regard to Digital Hive, we've been working on this joint venture with the GDV Hub. Why is the GDV Hub important to our customers? We needed to be able to provide something that was a benefit to the broader cohort. Goes to the heart of data quality assurance, and I think earlier on Milos was talking about, if you can't assure your data, you don't have trust, and that's what we're about. Allowing all parties to check the created data. The benefits will include creating integrity and workability, introduction of data governance, elimination of duplication, improvement in the processing efficiencies, customer service, and quality, completeness, and accuracy of data, and compliance with specific data requirements as specified. Ultimately, allowing asset owners to manage their assets effectively and efficiently. In summary, what we saw was the challenge was to get land developers, local governments, utilities, consultants, and other professionals associated in the land development asset management industries to be able to lodge designs and as constructed information to the specifications that have been put in play. How did we propose to resolve this? Developing the GDV Hub as a SaaS, a software as a solution, using the One Spatial toolset of One Integrate and One Data Gateway. The key benefits to the customers would be a web-based portal to lodge plans, to be validated, perform logical corrections against the A-SPEC requirements. The SaaS will provide a platform for further development to provide validation services for other standards throughout Australia and other parts of the world. The challenge that we encountered: there are 7 disciplines of specifications requiring automated validation and correction within the A-SPEC standard. We wanted, as we said, develop a software as a service portal. The validation and correction of the design and as constructed data needs to be able to support multiple industry formats. And we've chosen on shapefiles, MIFMID or MapInfo, and GeoPackage. Support for legacy and current standards. So we guarantee that we'll be supporting previous versions, as well as the most current that George and the team come up with. We will be allowing it to automatically process data of the 7 disciplines. We've got D, R, O, B, W, S, and soon to come T-SPEC. A single process for all of the A-SPEC disciplines. So you don't have to do individual ones, you just lodge them and all of them will be processed at the one time. Support for all other specifications, nationally and internationally, are to be able to be done with this platform, providing a homogeneous environment for validation and auto-correction of data to standards. The features, the application is cloud-based. It does validation and logical corrections, data lodged in the 3 major spatial formats. The users do not need to have any lodging experience. It is a very simple, and I'll be demonstrating it, process. Support for previous and past, as we mentioned, user-friendly drag and drop navigation of files, and it automatically determines the A-SPEC discipline that has been lodged to be processed against the requirements or the standards. You pay as you lodge, so you don't have to buy anything, purchase any software. If you want it, you just simply lodge it and you pay for that lodgement. Dashboard information is provided for measuring performances. No need to purchase any software, as I mentioned. Auto correction is a premium service, and we also have schema mapping, and when we do a lodgement, processing all A-SPEC disciplines in a single lodgement, as mentioned. The outcomes: data validation, data correction, and schema mapping. So I'm going to now run through how this works for you so that you can see it in the real world. So what would happen is you would register and become a member of the GDV Hub, and you then log in. And when you log in, there are 2 levels of access to the system. One is you can just be a A-SPEC data supplier, and you can also be an A-SPEC user administrator. So that would be a person in a referral authority or a manager in a large firm where you have a number of people providing and submitting data, and the administrator would be able to view what has been submitted by various people. So the assignments page, when you log in and you go in, you'll see there'll be tiles showing you for the 3 different formats, and we have them for correction and for validation. So I'm going to run through just the validation at this point in time, and I'm going to shoot in to the GDV Hub environment. And what you'll see here is what your previous lodgements, files that you've have submissions that have been lodged. You can go into your account, you can change your information, you can change your password, you can load up a picture of yourself as an avatar, etc. Away you go. What I'm going to do now is very quickly go in and take on a validation for A-SPEC. Sorry, not Geopack. Go back. I want to go to validation for a shapefile. I can go to information and it will give me documentation for explaining how to do things, and also has some sample data sets that you can download. So if I download that, it automatically downloads it into your download. And I'm now going to go back to submissions. And Kelly, I think you're interfering with my view. Just hang on, I've got to move you out. Okay. Shrink that down. There we go. We can see start a new submission. In here we start a submission, and you can either drag and drop or you can go and search. So we'll click onto that data file, which is a zip file of all of the files. And in this case,
Andrej,
yes, yeah.
Does the GDV Hub accept CAD data?
No, it is an A-SPEC compliant system, so it only receives GIS data, so MIF-MID, shapefile and geopack.
Great, thanks. And you've got
this
4
point.
minutes left. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll continue very quickly. Not going to get too carried away. So we're just going to go continue. And it will then process the information. And this is a validation. So what it's going to do is just validate the information. If I click on here and I quickly look at the report, we will see that our validation report, we have got classes that are not supplied, that may not all may be required, but some may be. So we will be able to choose which ones we want. And in here, it also shows you the head wall class have got some errors. There are missing attributes and there are excessive attributes. And you'll see that they kind of match, and it's because the naming is incorrect. So we'll go continue. And it will then produce a non-conformance report of CSV, and that is data that is not conforming, that is non-spatial, so not points, not lines, not polygons, and we have a shape file that we can click on, download, and open up. But because we do not have a great deal of time, I'm going to continue on to show the aspect of the GDV hub that I believe is the main point. And that is, where did my PowerPoint go? There it is. Logical corrections. So with our corrections, we're going to be able to do spelling corrections, data types, and schema corrections. Very quickly, I'm going to go quickly into corrections. And we're going into the portal. And here we have, again, we're going to start a submission in our corrections area. Again, we're going to load up. I'll just drag and drop that file into there, go continue. And it will go through and process. And we can see here that when we look at our information, we've got our target and we've got our source. We can go in and flip it around and say, okay, our target, our source data and our target data, this is what's required. At the end of the day, this has already been matched. So I'm just going to pretend that I haven't got anything, and I'm going to have neutral, and you'll see that there's nothing that's matching. So I can quickly go in and say, there's the area, there is the head walls, and there is the pipes. You'll notice that the head walls have still not matched perfectly, and that's because if you remember in our validation, our eastings, our type, and our unique ID weren't exactly the same, so we're effectively doing spelling mistakes here. We go continue, and it will now go through and validate and correct where it can logically do corrections. So as we can see, we're going through processing, geometry types have been checked, attribute names have been checked, and we can see here that our table relationship, we've got a failure. And if we go down there, we can see here that area of extent, we have object or a object that is exceeding the area of extent, and none of the pipes and pits have actually been registered, so it fails. The system can't automatically correct that because that requires a person to make that decision. A system can't do that. So we will acknowledge it, and we then have the ability to download the error report file or the non-conforming file, and we can review the report to show.
That's your timer buzzer gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, I've shown that. I didn't get a chance to show a successful one where it would then provide you the ability to lodge the completed file.
Actually, there's a few more minutes because Gabby's having trouble with his internet. He's dropped out and he's trying to find another tower. So you've had a reprieve, Andre.
Okay, well,
Go
I'm
on,
going to
Andre.
keep going.
few
So I'm
minutes.
going to do another submission now where I'm going to go to my assignments again, and I'm going to go and do a shapefile correction again. And I'm going to do a new submission. And this time I'm going to load a file set that will pass, just to demonstrate that it does pass files that are correct and how that would look. So again, we have our schema mapping. We can go and collect one or choose one that was being used before. So we'll just apply that. Again, flip it around. We can see that they are all matched. We go continue. There is a lot of bells and whistles in the system, but we don't have the time to go through them. And as you can see, it's now processing. It has checked. And we just have to wait for it to allow me to resume. And we keep going, processing. It is processing, and we can now go continue. And we now have a corrected output file that we can now download along with the report that shows, I'll just quickly open that up, that the submission has been successful as per the rules. So I'll go back to this one, and I'm now going to, again, download the corrected file. And I'll quickly open that up. No, I won't bother opening it up just to show it to you. I'll just go into the conclusion. So our web page is where you can go to become a to register to be able to use it. So you go to gdvhub.com, register yourself. You will then be given a registration code to access the hub. For the month of October, you can obtain free trial to RD-SPEC, and A-SPEC will soon be coming. You can use your data or you can use the sample data that's available. When you join the GDV Hub community, you receive 4 free submissions per year. You purchase submission credits, and if you buy a lot up front, you get bulk discounting. And we look forward to further standards in the GDV Hub. If you want assistance, we have A-SPEC standards are through the GISA organisation. They specify the standards, and that's where you go to for that. For A-SPEC submissions, you go to the Digital Hive group for their support. And with regard to the GDV Hub, Spatial are developing that in conjunction with Digital Hive, and you are free to get in contact with us for support if you are a GDV Hub member. If you want to learn some more, we are running our annual breakfast seminars around the country starting next Monday in Perth, then Adelaide on the 11th, Canberra the 12th, Hobart the 13th, here in Melbourne on the 14th. So please, if you are interested to find out more, come along. If you do, take note of that code. When you register, if you use Spatial25, you'll get a 25% discount being part of this event. We will be running a lunch and learn in early November to allow you to learn more. Are there any questions? Is Gabby back?
Thanks, Andre. I have a quick question for you.
Yep.
To take advantage of that offer in October, do they need a code or it will just happen automatically?
Just happens automatically. If they register, log on to the website, register themselves, they'll automatically be getting a 1 month free trial period.
Legend. Okay, thanks, Andre. And
Thank
so
you.
Emma has just put the link to register for those breakfasts in the chat, and I've put the special 25% discount code in. So if you want to do that, then you should register. So Gabby, I'm assuming you're here, and I'm going to continue to go forward like you are here, and hopefully
Gabby's not here, Kelly.
Right. Well, then what I might do is quickly go through a couple of things, and then we'll circle back to Gabby, if that's all right, George.
Yeah, of course.
So throughout this series, I have been running a series of polls, and I just wanted to give, and I promised I would share the information with you, so I'm going to do that now. But I just wanted to note that the growth in our A-SPEC forum since 2021, it's been quite interesting, and even for this showcase alone, we had something like 80 registrations for the showcase, and we hadn't even firmed up the agenda. So people really seem to be enjoying the forums and getting involved. So that's been very, very positive. We will, of course, will be running same time next year. So keep your ear to the ground for the dates, etc. And please feel free to send us through any information that you think may assist in improving the way we present or our content or whatever. One of the things that we were wanting to know was sort of who we were presenting to, what sort of people, and what we found was 34% of our attendees were actually from local councils, and 34% of those that responded to the polls, it was their first time attending an A-SPEC forum, which is really interesting. And of course, 74% of our respondents either wanted to start using the API code list or to get more information. So we really pushed our API list this year, and that's out there, and people are jumping on board with that, because I think we're offering free, George, until when?
Until the end of the year, and with subscribers until their next renewal.
Yeah, so the API will connect your specs into your system, and if you
code lists, at least.
Yeah, code lists into your system. So we will, if you're interested in that, just drop George or Gabby a line, and we'll hook you up to get that started. Having been locked down in Melbourne for quite a long time, we dreamt about holidays and places to go. And so I asked people what their favourite places to holiday were, and most people said Australia, which is great. But you know, if we wanted to go outside of Australia, then there were a few other ones: Switzerland. I can't even read them; they're a bit small. Hopefully, they're big. They're bigger.
Mauritius, Positano.
Thank you.
Dubai, Crete. I wonder who put that one there.
George put Crete there, so you know. Anyway, so it was interesting to have that information, and if you're planning your next holiday, you know, there was lots of ideas around that.
Come and see me on Crete.
Yeah, George is the expert on Crete. A-SPEC code list, API and web app. So I just covered that off. That was the breakup. So the blue is the yes, the red is the no, and the green is more information. So that QR code there will sign you up, well, not sign you up, will push you over to Digital Hive, which is the sign up page for the API, George, I believe. And then once it's not automatic, so once Gabby will get an email once you've registered your interest, and he'll contact you to organise that, or providing more information if that's what you're after. So that's going to give you over to George. So maybe it's back to Gabby. Is he here yet?
No, Gabby's his internet has gone down. The tower has gone down, so there's no internet in his region. So I'm not sure if we're going to get to him. He has. I said to him that he should drive to the next town, and he needs to get an e-bike instead of just pedaling. But unfortunately, we may not see him. So I think what I'll do is I'll just kick off with my presentation, and if Gabby can get on.
Just before you go, George, into your presentation, I just want to invite anyone from the audience or attendees today that if you have some clever QGIS tech to share that uses around the A-SPEC data series, feel free to send me a quick chat, and perhaps you might want to share it with the rest of the group in lieu of our tech presentation. So over to you, George. You're on.
Yep. Thank you. And it doesn't have to be QGIS, just if, so we'll see how we go for time. I might soak it all up. Who knows? I was busy adding some more things to my presentation, Kelly. But
so shall I stop sharing, George, then?
No, it's okay. I will share, Kelly.
Okay, great.
So can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can you see the next slide? Great. So look, something that we haven't actually done before is show you the extent of our member base. So I thought this would be a good way to start, to show you that we're across Western Australia, New South Wales and Victoria, to give you a sense of who in our community is doing what. And there are some key stakeholders there as well, so who may not necessarily be using our specs, but actually refer to our specs, like the Growth Areas Authority in Victoria, which is now part of the Victorian Planning Authority, and they have in their model conditions for land development that councils within that Victorian Planning Authority area, which are the growth councils, use A-SPEC in their model conditions. So you know, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that don't often get spoken about. So I thought I would delve in a bit more about our attendees and contributors. And look, and it was great to see registrations from a broad range of fields. This sort of goes on to a little bit more detail from what Kelly presented a bit earlier. And what was pleasing about this was that the asset management discipline makes up nearly half of the attendees. And so really, I think it's, you know, when we first started these, there was a greater focus from the GIS area and the surveying community, but now we can see there's more interest from the asset management sphere, and that's probably a level of maturity that we're seeing from the industry as well. And in terms of the breakdown of our attendees for 2022, you can see that A-SPEC was by far the most popular forum. And again, I think that comes down to the level of maturity of the organisations dealing with their asset base. But as you can see, D and O-SPEC as well have had high attendances. So historically, over the last 3 years that we've been running these forums, these are the registrations that we've had between 2020 to 2022. And A-SPEC continues to be one of the most highly attended forums. So some key messages that I want to provide during my presentation. First one is around data governance, clarifications, and I'll cover off some frequently asked questions. I'll talk about compounds and precincts, and then future proofing before I wrap up. Now let me just go back a step. Okay, so in terms of data governance, we spoke about confirming what would be provided at the handover stage, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment about our checklists and so on. We also spoke about the asset recording principles. And look, from a data governance perspective, there's been a lot of talk today, about the importance of data standards for digital twins and, things like, I put in a statement, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So from an asset recording perspective, we really want to create the expectation of what our community can expect. That's going to create certainty for them and also certainty for the data creators. Also from a data governance perspective, we talked about the inbuilt spatial relationships and connectivity, also part of the future proofing. This is something that's inherent in all of our specifications, the connectivity issues. Johan spoke about the cross table relationships between, a center line and a polygon for a road surface. And those sorts of things are really critical because it really creates a complete picture of what's there. Part of the clarification process and frequently asked questions is that we wanted to share those with you. The clarification process is really an opportunity for us to instruct consultants about making sure that what they're doing is going to comply. So we get a lot of questions asked, and particularly when there's new features, we've got a number of consultants that communicate with us regularly, which I really appreciate because it also gives us an opportunity to see how robust the specifications are, and we're constantly seeing the increase of new features and the effort that we need to make in making sure that our code lists are appropriate, and I'll talk specifically about that in a moment. But we're also talking about updating drawings to reflect the narrative. And that's also important because, as Fergal identified a bit earlier, it's so easy to create a visual representation of the message. And a very large part of the specifications, when you go through them, is a visual element to it. It's fine to say we talk about points, lines, or polygons, but what's really critical and the key elements of the specifications is that we show how to create those points, lines, and polygons from what somebody may see on a design plan or out in the field of practical completion. And a lot of the time we get questions about what happens when a code does not exist. And that comes up regularly. And we have a code called C comment. That's the actual entry. Many of you may be familiar with it. And the purpose of that is to populate your field and put supplementary information into the comments field. That will enable your data to actually pass any validation checks that are performed by things like ACDC or in the future GDV Hub and what other vendors have within their software. And we're always talking to vendors about making sure that certain things pass. And sometimes we leave things off the code list, so that feedback is always valuable. But there's a further point about the C comment field, and it came up with a council saying, I've got C comments in my fields. I can't put them into my database, into my asset management system. And I say to them, so why are you doing that? Well, the answer was because it's in that field. So that field is just an indicator that there's something that doesn't exist in the code list at the moment and a trigger to create a new code. So the key message I want to pass on to everyone is whether you're a consultant who is finding a new feature or you're the asset owner receiving that data, as soon as you see a C comment field, I request that that be a trigger to communicate with us to create a code. Now, I'm not sure if Gabby is going to be able to get up and running with what he was going to present, but one of the things about the API that he has built is that there's the opportunity now to create that request live. So as soon as you find that you don't have a code in the list, you can use the API to lodge a request to create a code, and others will be able to see that. And our objective is that on a weekly or a fortnightly basis, we'll just we'll create a digest, and the updates will go out to everybody who has the API so that they know. And I'll talk a bit more about our code list a bit later. And then compounds and precincts, I've got an example of that, and future proofing, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on that. Now, this might actually give you an idea of what I'm going to present, but I can see that my sequencing is not quite correct. So we'll see how it goes as I am doing this example. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to address that right now, but we'll just bear with it. So in this particular example, just pretend that those labels don't exist. One of the reasons that that we ask for people to send us examples is we want to see how you classify assets. So during the forums, we ran some polls and we asked you how you would classify things, and in other instances, we just wanted to share knowledge about what our interpretation is of how to share things. So in these two scenarios of a road, we have the black and white photos represent two areas. One is a crossover or vehicle, it could be a driveway vehicle, we classify as a vehicle crossover, and the other one on the bottom right, you can see in exactly the same kind of scenario, we've now designated as a road. And the purpose and the reason for that is that on the left, that mustardy coloured polygon was not a council-owned asset. It was a private driveway that went into a little court area where there was a number of buildings there. The bottom right is actually a gazetted road and therefore needed the full A-SPEC requirement of it. So it's important that we get that kind of feedback, and we're always happy to receive it. Now, in this particular scenario, we ran a query about how you would classify the baffles inside of a water tank. And we gave a number of options, whether it was a gate, whether it was a fence, whether it was a mechanical feature, whether it was an electrical feature. And the answer to that was that it's a mechanical feature. Now, did we need to create a new asset class for it? No, we already had the asset class as mechanical feature. So in that particular instance, we added a new code of baffle. And that way that satisfied the requirement of baffle. And also taking into account the asset class, whether it was a point, line, or polygon feature, is very important as well. I talked about the asset and asset data handover checklist. Purpose of this checklist is to actually create certainty about what you as a data provider needs to provide and what the asset owner will actually receive. So this will require collaboration and communication between the parties to create the document that shows exactly what is going to be provided. So in this particular instance was an example that I showed throughout the forums, how we used it, we sent it to our client who asked us to prepare some data, A-SPEC related data. And as you can see, it may have been A-SPEC related data, but it had other features in there, such as D-SPEC features and A-SPEC features. And by doing that, we were then able to determine whether it was their responsibility to provide those civil features or their responsibility was only for the open space features. Once this is signed off, it can be added to a particular document as part of the assessment process. In this particular instance, this document, when you download the checklist, if you haven't already, and that's available on the A-SPEC website, it goes for 6 pages, and there was 35 asset classes that were identified as part of this. Now, this project is going to be completed in 2024, and the value of doing this exercise was that it would go on file, and if the people transitioned in and out of that area, that council or the consultant, they knew exactly what we were going to deliver for them. And so it was created that certainty. Reserved words. And if I could spell, it would be even better. So reserved words is around the different reserved words that different databases have, even applications like the Esri ArcGIS software have reserved words, right? So whilst it may come in with, in that particular instance, we've got the asset class on the left. So whilst it may come in for the access point as type, a proposed alternative could be AP_type. Now that can be a post-processing exercise. So the asset, if you want to do it as a data provider, you just need to be conscious that pre-configured validation processes may fail it if you call it AP_type. So this is more of a direction and guidance for the asset owner that once they receive that data, before they move it into their preferred database environment or corporate information system, that change it. Just make the change. It's a simple thing to do, and it's something that you could factor in as part of your scripting from going from one environment to the other. Sorry, I'm just checking my messages. I've just got something from Gabby. No, his internet is still off. In this particular scenario, one of the frequently asked questions, which resulted in it impacting all of the specifications across probably a dozen tables, was removal of unnecessary attributes. Now, the unit cost and unit reference was actually removed from a number of areas, such as the parking layer. The parking layer is really line marking. There's no reason to have a unit cost and unit reference on there. Now, for other instances where where the unit cost and unit reference was relevant, we're also asked to make sure that the comments related to the requirements. As you can see there, the blue crossed out text was actually removed from the unit reference description, and the unit cost text in yellow has been added so that it was relevant to that. So there's actually 2 changes that request triggered, and we've affected that now. Now, one of the frequently asked questions also is onboarding contractors, because some councils wanted to pass on information to the consultants. We request that you don't do that. We have a process for all consultants to contact us, and we request that as an asset owner, if you're dealing with a new consultant, have us be the second point of contact after yourselves. And the purpose of that is that there's twofold. One, there's a governance perspective that everybody that has access to the specifications is requested to sign a non-disclosure agreement, whether private or public. But also from that perspective, we can then check that from a governance perspective, are they being requested to provide data by A-SPEC members or not? And we're finding of late that some consultants are being requested to provide A-SPEC data by councils who are not members. So that triggers a different process for us to follow up with. But from a contractor's perspective and a data provider's perspective, it gives us the opportunity to find out the capability of the people and just see where they're at and how we can support them to make sure that they put an environment in place that can comply with A-SPEC. I talked about compounds. How do we deal with compounds? A-SPEC is a typical example. This scenario I've shown a few times for the purpose of showing how the different assets can be used in a compound scenario. And what I'm showing you there is just a fairly basic animation to show that in this compound, where Central Coast Council are proposing the upgrade of their water treatment plant, that we take into account all the different assets that are there. And this is an example of what could be provided as part of that exercise. And out of doing this exercise, we also discovered that we didn't have a hard stand there. And the asset classes that were there did not really satisfy the need. So we couldn't put it in as a pathway. We couldn't put it in as as hard landscaping. So a new asset class was created. Now, from a future proofing perspective, this was touched on, this is a much simpler diagram than the one that Milos and Kelly discussed. But in essence, this is what needs to be considered. And we did a lot when we were doing our work in New Zealand and working with them to develop their national metadata standards. This really became apparent about the fact that there just isn't the communication between the different areas. And one of the things that we find is by adopting data standards, that's great. But as Milos elaborated on, there is a much bigger picture to address. And so from our perspective in the asset world, yes, to hit that sweet spot right in the middle is really the key to it. And so this really gives us a different perspective from a future proofing angle. And of course, once you've got that kind of alignment, then there's a whole lot of other things that you can start applying to it because you've got certainty about your data. And I didn't talk about this in this context, but I thought it was really important in light of the conversations we were having today. And as you can see, if we, at the bottom left, you've got the design and build perspective, and then you've got the as-built metadata. And the different color codes here really represent the influence that the as-built metadata has on all of these other schemas. So if you want to find your sweet spot, this is what we discovered and what was outlined to us through our work in New Zealand, that the sweet spot is the critical element. And in fact, it was shared with us that from an asset manager's perspective, they really wanted to find out the day before when an asset fails. Ideally, you want to find out well before, but you don't want to be doing reactive repairs and maintenance. I showed this presentation around asset analytics because everything about future proofing is then leading into this, and I just want to run it again whilst I've got your undivided attention. And there's really two key areas to watch. On the left, you can see that the segments, there's been quite a work being put into this to take feeds around utilization, predictive utilization, existing repairs and costs, and growth in that area in population. And as you see, the different segments of the pipes in this particular renewal forecast have been changing based on what's happening, whether there's renewal, whether there's growth. And you can see that the condition goes from great condition right through to condition 5, where repairs need to be done. And the top chart really shows on an annual basis what can happen. And I thought this was really important to show during the forums, because it's like, okay, so you subscribe to A-SPEC. It's like a so what moment. The so what is, if we want to future-proof our decisions and have evidence-based investment decisions on our infrastructure development, then there's a lot that we can do and need to do before we get to this point. Gabby spoke about leveraging 3D from a Revit environment, and in this particular scenario, you can see that a duct, and what Gabby showed us was that the benefits of getting your data right also translate to taking extracts out of your 3D environment. Now, this is an example taking data from one of the buildings that Wellington City Council created a Revit model for, creating a B-SPEC schedule, which is the schedule on the left with those B-SPEC fields, and that's all populated through the drawing, because what they then did was take that into their asset management system, assign an asset ID, and then link that asset ID back into the Revit model. And unfortunately, that's what Gabby was going to show us today, because he's been showing us how to use Dynamo, the Dynamo tool, to create the shared parameters files and how to update those schedules and to extract them. He was going to take us to the next step, but we may run we'll run another session so that Gabby can actually show us that. That's dedicated to leveraging from your 3D world. So we ran a lot of polls, and so we've spoken about the checklist. So one of the polls was, would the checklist save you time? And you can see the responses there. We also ran a poll about whether people wanted to see the full document. Now, to put this into context, we have for people who haven't attended or this might be your first ever attendance of an A-SPEC forum, we have a cut down document that just shows the changes, and we also show the changes in the full document. So you can see from the responses that what the preferences are. We also asked you about your preferred phasing time. And again, you can see what the responses are. So to summarize those 3 polls, going forward, we'll be providing not just our subscribers, but everybody with the checklist. In fact, they're available right now to download from the A-SPEC website. And if you go to the A-SPEC website, in the search box, type in proposed changes, it'll go to that, click onto that page, and you can download the checklist. We also have the proposed changes in the full documents there. So we will only be providing the full document from now on. And if you have a login to the website, you can download those documents and have a look at them. And the phase-in time will be 6 months. We spoke briefly about the datum, just to get a sense of how, what kind of impact is the GDA 2020 datum having versus a dynamic datum ATRF. And you can see from that response that nearly all of the submissions are, or from the people that responded, they're working in GDA 2020. We spoke about the existing document versus the new document, which we now call the new document DDS. One of the requests was, sorry, I'll go back a step. So the only difference between the 2 documents is that there's an extra column in the existing document, and that's where we have categorized every attribute to show whether it's a core requirement, a required attribute but may need more research, and an optional field. And as you can see there, our blue and the cross out is is historically how we show changes, as well as the yellow. And we're changing from YR to RR. And the reason for that is that this was one of the requests that came out of the forums, and we put it to a number of people during that forum, and the response was positive. So that's what we did. Last year we had under new asset classes, we always ask you about what new asset classes were that you'd like incorporated, and we were looking at developing a marine features asset class. So these are the requests that came up. I'm pleased to say that we now cover all of those features, and in fact we've created a new feature in A-SPEC, and as you can see, the new feature in A-SPEC is called Marine Safety and Assists Facility, and we've also created poles. So there's 5 new asset classes that are coming into the specs, and as well as the related code lists. See, comment I've spoken about. Here's an interesting one for you, and I'm not sure, many of you may already be doing this, but we had a request just recently after one of the forums was, George, I've got a code. It's already existing, but it's in a different code list. Can we include it in the new code, in the code list that I'm working on? So it was the pipe relining material, so GRP, glass reinforced plastic, and the asset owner asked, can I use that code in the pipe material code list? And the answer is, of course you can, and you don't actually need to confirm it with us. Any of the codes that are in the specs can be used across all of the codes. So if it's already existing, just let us know that you're adding an existing code from another table to this table that you're now working with, and we'll make that adjustment in our records, and then that will also be reflected in the API and web app that Gabby has. There are new code lists, and we also make use of existing code lists. So sometimes the existing code lists that applied to a new asset class or a new attribute, some of the elements may be removed at it because they're not appropriate. But in fact, we're really trying to use what existing code lists we are rather than creating new ones. Access via API and web app I've spoken about. There will also be a spreadsheet. So if you prefer just to access the spreadsheet and manually process everything, that will still be available. So every time we send out an update, or Gabby sends out an update to the API users and web app users, then we'll also make sure that the spreadsheet is up to date on the website as well. These came out, it's an example of a new code that came out of a request leading up to the forum. And thank you to Calibre Consulting for the opportunity to make our specifications robust and relevant. This also came out of a request. I think I'm correct that it was John Cleverton from Marshalls. John is a regular contributor to making sure that our specs are robust, and in this particular response was how we dealt with it. Primary changes, 2 new attributes. We noticed, well, we created a new attribute for the area works extent ID because we found that people were spending a lot of time getting an area boundary right. And then we found other issues with, well, what happens with overlapping area boundaries? And if people are using spatial techniques to apply the project information to those assets, then why don't we just do it smarter? So we've created a new attribute, which is an attribute of the area works ID extent boundary, and that attribute is added to every asset class. In doing that, we also found that there are some asset classes that don't have unique identifiers. So we communicated that we were also doing that as well. So what does the future hold? These are the longer term goals, probably medium to longer term goals that we're looking to do. Possible consolidation of all specs, where, that came up as a query. We were starting to think about, well, what's that going to look like? So this is what's in the pipeline for consideration. In the short term, though, we're going to complete the updates and make videos available. In fact, the first video is available for B-SPEC, and I think we're going to be sending out a link to that, and you'll be able to access the link through the A-SPEC YouTube channel. And sorry, the link will take you to the A-SPEC YouTube channel where you can access this and other material that we're putting on there. Our A-SPEC roadmap. So we started looking at this back in 2017, and we've done the first part. We've done the second part. So we've restructured the document, so we've harmonized the documents. What we're now looking at is, what does 2018 onward look like? And the way that we've been preparing our specifications is so that every asset class is standalone. What I mean by that is, if we want to create the Kelly spec, then Kelly may have a project that has some trees in it. It might have some retaining walls. It might have some car parking. Then she can go in as as a subscriber to the specs, or as to create, say, for a capital works project, that she can then see exactly what needs to be done, and she can create the Kelly spec with all the related code lists and the like, and make that available as part of a contract package, a tender package, whatever it might be. And so it gives greater flexibility rather than having to focus on understanding everything that's in the specifications.
So, George, you've got a couple of minutes left.
Yep.
Thanks.
Good. How's that? So it's actually been a whirlwind, hasn't it, Kelly? 7 presentations, 7 forums in 7 weeks. It's the first time we've actually done that. In previous years, we've given ourselves a break in between a couple of them and expanded it over 10 weeks. But it's been really great. I want to acknowledge everybody who has attended our forums, everybody who's contributed to our forums. I want to acknowledge you for doing whatever you needed to do to come in and be a contributor. It's been my vision to have a knowledge sharing community, and I'm really been experiencing that the last few years. And your contributions at the forums really culminate that vision that I had. It's unfortunate that Gabby was not able to do his tech presentation, but as I said, we'll create a lunch and learn session, and we'll talk specifically about leveraging from 3D. There's a number of people I want to thank. Kelly Island, number one. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, George.
You've dragged me kicking and screaming into the 21st century. Thank you for that. I was only in the 20th before, technology-wise, but thank you. Behind the scenes, Natalie Northey and Kim Hesse, some of those names may be familiar to you. They've been instrumental, along with Kelly, in preparing the material, and particularly with a lot of the graphs that we presented today of the results. It really makes a difference having that team behind you, and it's nice just to have to focus on talking rather than having to build everything. Gabby for his contribution on our tech talks, each forum, each of the presenters today. You're all stakeholders of the community, and some of you have been more than that. Our partnership with Open Spatial has been long-standing, and as Johan outlined, we have joint sites that have both A-SPEC and ACDC in it. With Gabby, we now have, we formed a partnership with Digital Hive, and Digital Hive has a relationship with One Spatial, as you saw with what Andrej presented. So we look at this as an opportunity to form alliances and for everybody to contribute for the greater good. Yes, it's great to be paid for what you do, but if you hadn't guessed it, I actually love what I do, and I really enjoy communicating with everybody who wants to communicate with us and contribute to the ongoing success of the specifications. Kelly, anything you'd like to say?
No, I think I've really enjoyed this year's series of forums, and I'm working on an idea around a communication collaboration type online space where you guys can kind of get together and talk about specs, because I think that's what you like to do, and probably some quick downloads and newsletters and things like that will be on there as well. So that collaboration piece, so we can have that ongoing collaboration throughout the year. But otherwise, thank you everyone for your support and for coming along, and I look forward to getting Gabby's lunch and learn up and running. So sorry that he couldn't come along, and he lives in the outback somewhere. I don't know where he lives.
Not quite, but it's just unfortunate. Look, if anybody else wants to jump off, unmute themselves and say anything, you're more than welcome. We can relax now, Kelly.
And thanks Kylie as well for
oh yes, of course,
jumping in and helping out with the acknowledgement of country.
Yeah. Did I acknowledge all our contributors, all our presenters today, Kelly?
You did.
Have I said thanks to everyone? Yes. And yes, thank you, Kylie, for that personal contribution.